So we will begin with today's topic. The topic is called audits in quality systems. Now, whenever we look for quality, I mean, let us begin with the definition of quality. Many definitions of the quality include a component of conformance to standards. So many of you would have heard this definition that quality is defined as conformance to standards. There are hundreds of definitions, but this is one of them. So whenever we say that we are looking at the quality from the perspective of compliance to standards, it implies that we will also have a mechanism by which we will be able to confirm that we are complying to the standards. So audit provides us one such mechanism through which Dr. Rakesh Joshi, you have written that there is no audio. I'll request you to very briefly quit the I mean, relog in, rejoin the meeting. I think you are not able to hear.
Are you turning to say, Mama? Mama, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. I don't like it. I don't feel safe if you can't hear.
Okay, so we were at the beginning itself. So the quality definition requires that we measure the compliance to the standards, and this is what exactly the audit tries to do. So let us begin with the presentation. So how do we define audit? The common audit that all of us understand is the clinical audit.
Okay.
Because clinical audit is something that all of us have. Okay, I'll need a mechanism to mute everyone else, because please mute your mics. This distraction will disturb everyone. So an audit is defined as a quality improvement process that seeks to improve the patient care and outcomes through systematic review of care against the explicit criteria and the implementation of change. So in this definition, the important points are that the objective of doing any audit, especially the audits related to the quality systems in the hospitals, is to improve the patient care and outcomes. So every audit that we do is aimed at improving the patient care. The second is that it is a systematic review of care. So there has to be a process, there has to be a method defined by which this review will happen. It needs to be against the explicit criteria. So without the criteria, there can be no audit. So the criteria is important. And lastly, the implementation of change. So please remember that every audit that we do as far as the quality system is concerned must end with the implementation of change. So when we do an audit, something must improve. If your audit is not improving anything, then effectively there is no point doing the audit at all. So I'll have to find whose microphone is on, because this is creating a problem. Mr. Sheikh. So just give me a 2 minutes distraction. I need to figure out which microphone is on so that the disturbance is stopped. Okay. So, so if your audit is not resulting in improvement and any resulting in change in the practice, then possibly there is no point doing the audit. So this is an important part that we must understand when we start with the audit itself. There can be two kinds of audit. One is the retrospective audit, which basically looks at what has happened in past and we try to learn from the past. So all the activities that may have happened in past, for example, your CPRs have been done, the cases have been treated, patients have been treated. Sometimes there may have been an adverse outcome. So whatever has happened in past, when we try to do audit of that, it is the retrospective audit. And there can also be a concurrent audit where we not only take the data from the past, but we also look at the patients who are currently under care in the hospital. So we include the patients who are in the active treatment process or active care process, and those people are also included. So when that is done, it is called concurrent audit. Uh, the quality systems typically require that you do a mix. So you also include retrospective as well as concurrent audit. One reason for this is a retrospective audit can be, let us say, for a period last year. Now, if you do an audit of a period January to June 2019, even though it will fulfill all the criteria of the audit, but going so far back in history may not help. So going so far back in the history may not really help. So that is the reason why we say that the audit must have the retrospective data and also the concurrent ones. Okay. So let us sorry. So let us now look at I am using clinical audit as an example, but it is applicable to all the audits that we do, and I will quickly cover the kind of audit that we all the variety of the audits that we do. So audit is not a data collection exercise. So merely that you collected the data about patient care or about let us say any prescriptions or about any facility or about any safety. So mere collecting the data is of no value, of it is of no use. So if you collect data, it doesn't really make a difference. It is not audit. And then there has to be the audit must begin with the clear understanding that something will be improved at the end of it. So we should have this understood very clearly, because unless we have this in mind and an anticipation that something needs to be improved, we will not be able to improve or we will not be able to complete the very reason why the audit is being done. So this is something that is important. The second is that audit may be required to confirm that a practice has improved. So for example, you may have done the clinical audit of CPR that you do in the hospital, the code blue actions, and then you have made some changes to your practice or to your SOP or to your the way the code blue was implemented, and then maybe you need to confirm after 3 months or after 6 months time that the changes which you made, whether those changes are continuing to be effective and whether those changes are continuing to be implemented. So this is a confirmation that is required, and this confirmation is also a kind of an expectation that the practice is sustained, an improved practice is sustained. So this is one perspective that we all need to know. So what are the requisites or the prerequisites for an audit? So let us understand that this is what is this is what is an important part of any audit system. So a good a good record keeping is absolutely essential. Now we saw that the audit can be retrospective. It can also be concurrent. So when we want to confirm whether a particular criteria has been met or not, how do we confirm that? How do we know that a particular intervention was done? For example, let us say we are auditing our critical value alert system in the hospital. Now in the critical value alert system, what do? The lab, based on a test result, they raise a critical alert, and the critical alert is informed to the treating physician. The treating physician is expected to take certain action. The audit is being done to confirm whether there was an appropriate response to the critical value alert that was initiated. Now, unless the record of an critical value is there, unless there is a record that the alert was initiated, unless there is a record that the clinician did receive the information about the critical value alert, and unless there is a record that some follow-up action was carried out on the patient or treatment was changed. Unless this is available in the records, effectively no audit can be done. So therefore, a good record keeping is a prerequisite, and it is the most important prerequisite in the audit. The second prerequisite is that it must be carried out by fair and impartial professionals. Why? Because the purpose of any audit is to result the improvement, to create improvement, to ensure that improvement happens. Now, if the aim is to shoot at somebody, to find somebody to be blamed, then this is not audit. And therefore, the conduct of the people who are doing the audit is very, very important. They have to be impartial, they have to be fair, they cannot be biased, because if they are biased, then you cannot do an audit. I mean, this will become a fault finding mission, it will become a fault finding exercise, and fault finding exercise does not result in improvement. Fault finding exercise results in punishment. So the aim is not to create punishment, the aim is to create improvement. Then the clinician, nursing and the other staff as well as the patient anonymity is to be maintained. So if you want to create a situation where we are making improvements, this will be possible when the entire arrangement remains anonymous. Though it is a tough call, because in small hospitals, keeping things anonymous is not possible, because you may have maybe one physician or two physicians or one cardiologist or two cardiologists, and when you want to do an audit of in that specialty, then obviously the identity of the person will be known. But what is meant here is that when we are finalizing and preparing an audit report, that is the time when the patient identification, the doctor identification, the nurse identification, those things should not be there. Then initiative must come from within. Well, sometimes the initiative comes from within, but sometimes the initiative is driven by some other factor, and that other factor can be a JCI accreditation, because your assessment is coming and the JCI wants you to do certain number of audits, or it is an NABH assessment, or it is an NQAS assessment, or it is an NABL assessment. All these assessments will require you to do some audit in the hospital or in your setting. So initiative can come from within, which is ideal, but sometimes it comes from outside. So like we all need motivation in our life at one point or the other. So similarly, this also might require motivation. Then the purpose should be simple and clearly stated. So the audit must have a defined requirements. For example, so to improve the infection control in catheterized patient, or to improve the infection control in ventilated patients, or to improve the care process, to improve the pediatric care. So these kind of phrases are important that we must use. And lastly, the intention should be to effect the change for the better. The moment the intention, even a hidden intention, is to find a fault, the moment we want to find that somebody to be blamed, then that is not audit, that is a fault finding mission. And please remember, fault finding missions result in punishment and audit results in improvement. Okay, now this sorry, now the second the next thing that we need to know is, what is the difference between audit and research? I have deliberately included this in this presentation for a very important reason. A lot of my clinical colleagues and a lot of my colleagues in the nursing profession who may not have had the exposure to look at how the audits are done, sometimes when they conduct an audit, the audit takes a different shape altogether. For example, I have seen hundreds of audits in the hospitals when we see the hospitals. The audit is stated like this, that we compare this drug with this drug and we are doing the audit. Or we have the audit says that to see the effectiveness of a particular procedure, that becomes the audit. Now these are not audits, these are something what is called a research. Now, by definition, research is concerned with discovering the right thing to do. So you want to find for pain relief whether paracetamol is better or something else is better, or whether oral medication is better or a patch is better. So when you address these kind of questions, they are in the category of what is called research. I will have to again search for somebody whose microphone is on. Can I request everyone to please switch off the microphones so that, or rather mute the microphones? Okay, so the research is trying to find what is the right thing to do. This is not clinical audit. The clinical audit tries to do whether the things have been done correctly. So we are not trying to, okay, let me give you a very crude and a very simple example. Measuring the weight of a child who comes to a pediatric OPD is an important requirement. Now, when we do an audit of pediatric care, one of the point can be whether the weight was measured or not. This implies that weight must be measured for all the children who come to the pediatric OPD. But if the audit question is, should the weight be measured at all, then that is not an audit, because you are trying to find out whether measuring the weight is beneficial or not. We are not addressing this. We are seeing, we have already confirmed that measuring the weight is beneficial. There is an evidence for it, and then we are simply trying to confirm whether weight is being measured every time or not. So that becomes the clinical audit. Similarly, for example, let us see the CPR. Now in the CPR, there is a clear-cut defined protocol that the AHA has given. And in the ACLS implementation, the advanced cardiac life support, when it is implemented, then you look at the AHA protocol, and that AHA protocol is implemented. The clinical audit can be that you are confirming whether all the components and the steps of AHA protocol are being implemented in true spirit and correctly or not. We are not trying to find whether the AHA protocol is better than some other protocol, because then it becomes a research. So I hope it is now very clear. There are some more differences. Let us address those. So research addresses a clearly defined question or a hypothesis to generate new evidence to refute, support, or develop a new hypothesis. This is research. So research will ask a question, what is the best practice? And research may involve new treatments or new methods of treatments or new practice, new procedure, new medication, something like that. The research will use control groups or placebos for comparison. So typically in research, you have two groups. One is given a medicine, the other one is not given a medicine. Patients should be involved in the design, implementation, and analysis of the work. So a research must have the written consent of the patient. You have to explain the implication of the new treatment or medication to the patient. The patient has to accept the risks of the new medication or the new treatment or the new protocol, and agree that he will participate in the research. So this is typically a description of a research activity. And research activities are regulated by law. In almost all the countries, the research is regulated. There will be research governance. For example, in our situation in India, we have the Indian Council for Medical Research, ICMR, which has given a whole lot of guidelines. There are ethics compliance requirements. There are requirements of registering the trials and things like that. So research is always regulated. Research is always governed using a statutory means. So there will be a government involvement in all the research processes. Now let us see what is an audit. So an audit aims to improve the quality of local patient care, clinical outcomes through a peer-led review of practice against the evidence-based standards and implementing change where necessary. I hope you are able to appreciate the difference between the two. It asks the questions, are we following the best practice, and what is happening to the patient as a research? So suppose the best practice is to implement the AHA protocol for CPR. So the question is, are we following it correctly, and whether the patient is benefited in the process? The audit is initiated by professional bodies or research or the service providers, including the local healthcare staff and managers. So for doing a research, you don't require anybody's approval. Sorry. To do an audit, you don't require anybody's approval. the audit is designed to address whether the standards are being met, whether the criteria is being met or not. So this is about the audit, and the results are specific and local to a particular team or service. So when you do an audit in your hospital, that audit findings is applicable only to your hospital. They may not be applicable to other hospitals. Whereas the research findings will be can be generalized, and they can be applied to other other patients also of a similar kind. Okay. So some more important points. The audit will never involve a new treatment or a new practice. It never uses control groups. It never uses placebo treatments, nor does it involve allocating patients randomly to different treatment groups. So if you are doing any of these things, then it is not audit. The audit may take the inputs from the patients or the service users or even the treating physicians, but they are not involved. The consent of the patient is not required for audit, but you cannot do a research without the consent of the patients. So why should we know this? Because these two serve two different purposes and use two different methodologies. They are managed or funded differently. Audit does not require any regulatory or ethical approval. So an audit, when you are doing it, does not require any ethics committee approval, but a research will require that. The audit projects may be published without the ethical approval, but the research cannot be published without the ethical approval. Okay, so now having cleared the difference between what is research and what is audit, let us look at the types of audits that we do in the quality systems in the hospitals. Now I am addressing specifically only the hospitals. So we do clinical audit, which is the most common, the most important, and also the most often asked question in any quality system assessments, whether it is JCI, NQAS, NEBH, anyone, or even NABL. So clinical audit is there. Then we have nursing audit, which is essentially deals with the nursing processes. Sometimes the clinical audit may include the nursing processes as well. Then we have medical medical records audit. Now medical records audit is typically done to see the recording system, whether the management of the records is correct or not, and whether the records are being maintained in an appropriate manner or not, and whether the records are being created in an appropriate manner. So when you do the medical record audits, you are not addressing the appropriateness or the correctness of the protocol. What you are addressing is the things like timeliness, legibility, whether record is complete or not. So that is why medical record is a different kind of an medical record audit is a different audit as compared to other clinical or the nursing audits. Prescription audit is another variety where we audit only the prescriptions, and here the criteria are things like whether the requirements of prescriptions have been met. So there are statutory requirements of writing a prescription, the demographic data, the doctor's registration, the signature date, things like that. Whether the prescription is legible, whether the prescription it has taken care of things like allergies of the patients, or whether it has taken care of things like food drug interaction or drug interaction. So those kind of things, when we are measuring, we do the prescription audit for that. Then we can also do services audit. So services audit can be that you are examining various services in the hospital. So whether it is dietary service or your CSSD or your other support services, or even the services in the services which are part of the hospitality component of the hospital care. So you can look at the registration processes, or you can look at the discharge processes, or you can look at the sample collection, sample transportation. Also any service within the hospital, we can do the audit of it. And lastly, it is the safety audit, which again becomes an important part, and it is a part and parcel of the functioning of the safety committee. Safety audit is implemented in several ways. It can be done like a proper audit, the way the other audits are done. It can also be done like a facility safety round. But when you come to the safety audit in specific services, for example, where the radioisotopes are being held used, or whether there is a radiation source being used, or in the lab, so then you may have to design the safety audits little differently. So having covered this, we need to now figure out what is the generic audit process. This process is applicable to all the audits that I have covered in the previous slide. So typically we need to choose a topic, and this topic must be defined in such a manner that it indicates that the aim is to make some improvement, agree on a certain standard or a criteria based on which audit will be done. So for example, we want to do an audit of, let us say, a radiation safety. So then we have to agree on what is the criteria based on which the radiation safety will be assessed. So we can look at availability of the protection measures, the availability of protective equipment, calibration of the equipment, and so like that. So we can figure out what are the standards or the criteria that will be used. Now, please remember, the standards or the criteria will be different for different kinds of audits. So clinical, nursing, safety, services, there's like that. The criteria and the standards will be different from audit to audit. So when you do a clinical audit of a particular disease condition, it might be different, and for another condition it will be different. Then we do some data collection for about the topic that we have selected, and based on the criteria that we have made, we do some analysis which is based on comparing the data with the standards. So we say whether let us say when we are doing the prescription audit, then we see whether the prescription it has taken care of drug interaction or not, and if it has taken care of, then we say yes in the date format in the analysis. If it has not covered, then we say no. Again, if the doctor's signature is there, we say it is compliance, or it meets the requirement, and if it is not there, then it doesn't meet the requirement. And then based on the analysis, we make a plan that okay, this is what we will do, and then we implement that particular change. Following that, we give a gap of 3 to 6 months, and then after that period we do a re-audit to confirm that what we planned in the month of January, whether that plan is implemented in the month of June or not. The next important part of the any audit exercise is the sampling. Now the table that I have given is a table which is a popular table. This has been calculated using the standard formulas for sample calculation, and the size of the sample depends on the total population under study. If you have 50, then it is 44. I find that this table is the simplest way to calculate your sample size. Okay, and if you have a population size which is not covered in these slabs, then you simply take an average of the of two nearby things and then use that. For example, if your if your population size is, let us say, 3,000, and then you could take a figure between 2 to 5,000 and then accordingly calculate a sample like that, sample size like that. Now, sample size is important because if the sample size is not statistically correct, then your findings of your audit may not be applicable to rest of the audit. Let me give you an example. For example, your hospital generates, let us say, 1,000 prescriptions in a month. You are doing an audit for a period January to June, so 6 months. So 6 months means 6,000 prescriptions on an average. Now, if you just take 20 prescriptions out of 6,000 and say and you have a finding that the prescription does not have doctor's signature, it does not it is not legible, and there may be one or two more problems that you have found. Now, these problems you have found just by assessing 20 prescriptions. Now, if your sample size of 20 is not commensurate with this sample size that is given in the table, then you cannot apply this finding, these deficiencies that you have found to the entire population. So you can't say that just because you have found something in 20 prescriptions, the same thing is applicable to all 6,000 prescriptions, or it is generally applicable to all. So therefore, you need to have a sample size which is statistically significant, statistically correct. So for example, for 5,000 population, you should take at least 370 samples. Unless you take those many samples, you cannot generalize your findings. There are other methods of calculating the sample size. Internet has hundreds of websites where the formula is given, and you can use those formulas and calculate the sample size. But personally, if you ask me, I find that this table is very, very useful because you don't have to really get into the complications of figuring out what the sample size, how to calculate a sample size. Just take a figure and it works very well. Okay. Next is the data collection. So data collection formats have to be used, and these are the important points about it. So data collection formats have to be used. You can use computer-based forms. That means you type the data directly into the computer, or you can write it on the paper forms and then subsequently compile it. The important thing to remember is that whenever there is a transcription, that means somebody is writing data and then you are taking that data and again feeding it into the computer, or somebody is feeding it in the computer by direct observation. The transcription errors can take place. So there has to be a method by which you can avoid the transcription errors. That means the errors while writing the data. Then forms must be standardized. So if you are collecting data for the audit of, let us say, infection control in the catheterized patients, then that format must be standardized. And if after collecting half the data you realize that format has a limitation or a problem, then you have to redo the entire process. You can't just correct it mid-course and continue like that. You have to recollect the data, otherwise the analysis will go wrong. Data collectors may require to be trained. So it's important, obviously, because if the data collector doesn't know which data to pick up, and this is a very common problem in the infection control data, those HAIs, the healthcare associated infections that we measure, the COTY, CLABSI, SSI, and the VAP. So these infections, when we measure which patient to include as HAI and which one not to include, is dependent on the HAI definitions for each of these infections. So for example, COTY. Now we need to see whether the 48 hours have passed since the catheterization. We need to see clinical factors. For example, if there is a fever, we need to see lab reports like whether there is a leukocytosis or increase in TLC, and then we have to see many other things. So unless this data collector is trained, unless this data collector knows these criteria for including a particular patient into the data, your data collection will be wrong. So data collectors have to be trained, and that is why sometimes the data is collected by the auditor himself rather than giving someone else the task of collecting the data. And analytical tools have to be used for analyzing. We have covered the analytical tools separately in one of our previous sessions in this, and there are we also have many courses where this can be learned. So analytical tools have to be used. Next important step in any audit is to present the findings. So infection control audits must be presented in the infection control committee. The clinical audits must be presented in the quality committee or the apex committee. Your facility safety audits must be presented in the facility committee or the safety committee, or your audits of the lab safety, other things must be presented. So unless you present and share the findings of this audit, your work has not even begun. So sharing this and presenting these findings in front of the other colleagues and the rest of the hospital staff is very, very important. If full compliance, okay, so if full compliance with the standards have not been achieved, then the action plan must be designed during this presentation to the committee or something, to whomever you are presenting. The action plan should be designed how this particular improvement will take place. Then once completed, the audit projects should be presented both verbally and recorded as a written report. These must follow, they must address how well the standards are being met and highlight any problems that need to be addressed. Then presentation gets the message. So while that audit may be done by 2 or 3 people, but it must be shared in a larger forum so that everyone gets to know what are the good things and what are the bad things, or what are the problem areas in the hospital, so that improvements can take place. Unless we share, the improvements are not possible. An audit report also works as an official record of the audit has been done, and it needs to contain all the details. It must have the raw data as an annexure to it, the analysis methods of it, and it should be kept as an official record. This report also comes very, very handy when you are presenting your case, or when you are presenting in front of the assessment team for various accreditation systems. So if the JCI team comes or the NQuas team comes or the NABH team comes, these records come very handy and they very clearly demonstrate that you have been doing an audit correctly. An audit must include the plan of improvement. Sorry, my fault. This is not if, it is an action plan of improvement, and this action plan must also be discussed in the presentation when the audit is being presented. Then the changes have to be implemented and a re-audit has to be done. So the ethical basis for the audit, why should we do audit? Why is it that every quality system requires you to do the audit, is the second point in this slide. That the public, the patients, my patients or our patients have the right to expect that the practitioners will provide care that is consistent with the recognized good practice, and the audit helps us in maintaining the care processes in conformance with the good practice for providing care. So this is the ethical basis why we do audits in the hospital, and it must be understood. Once it is understood, it helps us in understanding the audits in the correct perspective. Now we have to remember that not all changes will be improvements. So we should not make a change just because an audit has been done and change must be done. Please remember, the change has to be substantive. It must result in significant improvement, and unless that happens, there is see, we are not doing it for the sake of doing it. We are doing it to improve. So this is an important understanding that must be shared with all of us. And this I have covered at an appropriate time, maybe 3 or 6 months later. Do a re-audit to ensure that whatever was implemented has continued, and the improvement is sustained. So these are the 3 courses that we have on the Rafa Learners portal. There is a master class on essentials of continual quality management. This program was developed in the month of June and will be discontinued by the end of this month. So the registration is open only till 15th of October because it's a 2 weeks program. So all those who register by 15th of October can do this, and on 31st of October midnight we are going to take this program off the list. Maybe in future it will come back again. Then we have a master course in the hospital quality system. This master course is a 6 weeks program where we cover the quality dimension of the entire hospital in a very, very holistic manner, and which includes the quality system requirements or the accreditation requirements of all the major quality systems. For example, the JCI or the QAI or the NABH or the NQuas, and also some components of NABL are also included. And we have a program which is coming up in the month of November. It is the root cause analysis in healthcare. Root cause analysis happens to be single most important activity that all of us are required to implement in the hospital, and therefore based on the demand and the difficulties being faced, we've designed this program. We are shortly going to announce the registration when it is open, so all of us, we'll share when the registration opens. So for more programs, please visit the Research Foundation's Learners portal. It is called the rfhha.aonmed.in. This is the official portal of the Research Foundation, and it's a learners portal. The courses are listed. With this, I have finished the presentation. If there are questions, then I'll be happy to take, and I'll also request you to ask clarifications or something that needs to be clarified, something needs little more explanation. I'll be happy. Before that, let me ask Sheenu ma'am, who is the co-faculty with me in many programs, and also Dr. M.M. Singh. Is there anything that they would like to add in this? Sheenu ma'am, please.
Yeah, the anonymity of the patient and the person, or wherever we are doing audit, we need to maintain that. That's very important, so that the confidentiality can be maintained. So
yes, and ma'am, your camera is closed, so I don't know whether it is by design or by default, but it is
camera
not
is on.
Acha, okay, theek hai. So basically, what Madam Sheenu has just said, anonymity is an important part, because anonymity, unless it is there, we will not be able to achieve our purpose of doing the audit. So Dr. MM, do you have anything to add in this? Dr. MM, you're there? Okay. It is, the forum is open for questions. Please ask questions, and in the meanwhile, I'll open the chat box and look at the questions. Okay. So what is it? Okay. Audio is an issue. I think this issue is coming with some of the participants. One simplest method I have found is to see whether the connection is correct, because connectivity is a problem. And since I conduct this session, so I have to perforce use the laptop to use this thing. But one simple way of having a good connectivity is using the mobile phone. So if you use the mobile phone, install the app in that, one should not have the problems of connectivity. I hope next time it becomes better. So there are few emails that Syed Hussaini, Pallavi, and some people have given. So this presentation will be shared definitely. Dr. Rupashri madam has asked the types of audit: retrospective and prospective. Yes, ma'am, I have not understood your question. I covered the audit, which is the retrospective and prospective. Well, a concurrent audit is a better term to use. Prospective means future. So, if you are going to do an audit and you are going to collect the data for the audit, how would you collect data for future unless that activity has happened? I mean, it may have happened today morning, and today afternoon you can collect the data, but if the activity has not happened, you can't collect data. So to say that it is a prospective audit, I don't know whether it is the right term to use. In the literature, at least, I have not found this. Shweta Raj has commented, prescription means pharmacy prescription or the IP file prescription. Madam, the prescription means both the IP prescription also and the pharmacy prescription or the OPD prescription. A prescription simply means that a doctor has prescribed a treatment. So when you do the prescription audit, IP files should ideally come in within this. Please clarify these doubts. Which prescription is to be used as quality indicators? Madam, you have to use both. The shortcut is, or many people use only the OPD prescriptions as shortcut, but your prescriptions of the IPD files are also prescriptions. So we can't say that they are not prescriptions. Salva has asked, audit consider as monitoring or improvement system or both? Madam, when you are doing it for the first time, a particular clinical problem or a particular problem, then it is an improvement. And when you are confirming that the changes are sustaining, then it is a monitoring. It can also, it can be taken as both. Abhishek Kumar has asked, death audit? Yes, death audit is an audit. You can include all deaths that have happened in last 1 year or 6 months and audit the care processes. Yes, it can be an audit. Dr. Rupashri has said, what about the audit checklists? Well, ma'am, the checklists are essentially the criteria that you have figured out in the step 2 of the audit. So once you have decided the topic, you have to decide the criteria or the standard, and those standards actually form the audit checklist. So yes, you can use a checklist. A data collection form also, when you collect the data and then when you match it with the standards, that also is a form of a checklist only. How long the data of audits to be preserved? This is another question. Dr. Rupashri is very involved. Very nice, ma'am. You have asked very good questions. So how long this should be preserved? So typically in the hospitals, we have a retention time as a matter of policy for the medical records, which are the patient records. For all other records, for example, the registers of the OPD, the OT registers, and all other documents that are generated in the process of patient care. Typically, hospitals have a different retention time, and that retention time can be up to a period of 3 years. So audit records also can be kept just for 3 years, because I'm saying 3 years because typically 3 years is the cycle of quality system review. So JCI, NABH, and QAS all, when they do a re-audit or when you have a re-accreditation assessment, so you should be able to show the audits that you have done in last 3 years. So 3 years is a good enough time, though you can preserve it even for lesser period of time. There is no stipulation and there is no legal requirement in the audit records, but they should be preserved till such time they are required for other purposes. So whether for study purposes or whether for the re-accreditation purposes. So that period is defined like that. Then Vidya has asked, what is the course fee? Ma'am, you'll have to go to the website that we have, and it is there in the last slide. It is the rfhha.eonmed.in. I'll just type it in the chat box also, so that you can visit that website and look at the fee. I don't think I'll be able to cover that because I also have to answer a lot of other questions. So I am not covering the course fee here, but please visit the website and it is there. https or fhha.eonmed.in. So this is the website. You can visit this and then have a look at the course fee. Madam Pramila has said, thank you very much, ma'am. So nice of you that you also could join today. And Dr. Rupa has again asked, what is the difference between medical and surgical audit? Madam, there is nothing called medical or surgical audit. It is clinical audit. It's good old term of medical audit included the surgical audit. So we are basically auditing the patient care. So it is clinical audit. Surgical audit, when you can call this when you are doing when you are including the surgical care. So when you do the audit of lab coli, please call it surgical audit. I mean, it's not a very commonly used term, but clinical audit is a term that broadly covers all patient care activities. Okay, then we have Deepthi ma'am wanted the presentation. Then it will be sent to you. Sushant has asked, you want the presentation? Okay, it will be given. What would be the retention period of audit? I think Mr. Abhishek, I have answered this question. This records, the audit data should be preserved as per the hospital policy, which is applicable to all other records. So if you have an operation theatre register, OT register, which you are preserving it for some time, so accordingly, like that, you preserve this also. Okay, again, cross audit or interdepartmental audit. Dr. Rupashri ma'am, the cross audit or a interdepartmental audit, I am trying to understand what you mean by this. Are you meaning that the audit of the patients of the medical, I mean the Department of Medicine, or let's say the patient care of pediatrics category will be audited by somebody else? Is that what you mean? Dr. Rupashri ma'am, please switch on your microphone and clarify this. So do you mean that interdepartmental means, I mean, my department will be audited by somebody else from other departments? Okay, I think ma'am may have probably left, but let me answer this question. The audit has to be done by people who know how to do the audit. So this audit conduct requires a little bit of learning, and this needs to be done. But there is nothing called interdepartmental audit. I mean, you can do clinical audit of the patients in the pediatrics and the patients in obstetrics and gynecology and the patients in some other field. But how do you apply findings of one audit to other? It doesn't really work that way. I mean, so unless you mean something different, Dr. Rupashri, I think I have covered what you are trying to ask. Okay, Dr. Vinoda ma'am wants the presentation. Yes. Then PPT in RAFA WhatsApp group. Madam, the PPT is available to people who attend this program. So if you give me your email ID, or if you have already given, Shweta Raj, the PPT will be sent to you in your email. We resist sharing such material on the WhatsApp groups. Okay, in what time intervals should we do clinical audit? Okay, Vidya has asked this question, an important question. Typically, once in a quarter or 4 audits a year is the requirement. Okay, so typically 4 audits in a year is the requirement. You can do as many as you please. Less than 4 is not acceptable by many clinical audit systems. So NABH will not accept it. JCI requires more. So, but more than that, no issue. Who and how will we proceed to make the audit checklist? Management want that quality will do all can. Okay, Mr. Abhishek Kumarji, I have not understood your question. Can you clarify that?
Sir, Namaste, Abhishek.
Okay, yes, Abhishek.
So my simple question was that, sir, ki who is going to make the audit tools? As we have a numbers of audit in the hospital, so who will be the
So,
responsible to generate the?
so in this presentation, we what we covered was a overview of audits. But if you go into the mechanics as to how the audit is done, you will typically make a team for doing the audit. Okay, so you may have, let us say, a small team of 3 people. So, and if you are doing the audit in the cardiology department, so that the 3 people will have one cardiologist, maybe one physician or someone else, and then you can have maybe one nurse who is working in the cardiology department. So this small team will make the criteria and then do the audit. The checklists have to be made by this team. I mean, it is not uh, practically possible to have a pre-prepared checklist because every audit will have a different thing to really look at. So this is one part of the answer that you the question that you asked. The second part is, please go to the website of NICE. It is called the National Institute of Clinical Excellence and Health in UK. So on the NICE website, it is called nice.org. So on the NICE website, you can get the ready-made audit tools, and you can download those tools. They can be used for the purpose of learning as to how to do the audit. Once you
Okay,
have
sir.
seen that, then you will figure out how to make the checklist. It's not very difficult, but in the present form, it is outside the scope of this today's session. We could maybe discuss some other time.
Sure, sure,
Okay.
sure, sure, sure.
Dr.
Thank
Basant
you.
Gupta has asked the difference between an assessment and audit. You're welcome, Dr. Abhishek ji. Dr. Basant Gupta has asked the difference between assessment and audit. So, well, it is only a matter of semantics. What is an assessment and what is an audit? The JCI calls it survey, the NABH calls it assessment, the NCOAS calls it assessment, and in our day-to-day understanding in the hospitals, we all call it audit. So uh, it is only a matter of semantics. I mean, how you understand it, and in many forums, these terms are used synonymously. So assessment and audit is same. But audit, when we talk of audit in the context of the topic that we discussed today, audit essentially means that we have a criteria based on which we are doing some assessment. And of course, the JCI and the other surveys also do the same thing. So to that extent, you can use these words synonymously. John Carminder has asked, is there a difference between medical audit and clinical audit? No, sir, there is no difference between the two. The term is used synonymously. Frequency of audit cycle, Dr. Ashok, I think I have answered this question. The NABH requires 4 audits in a year, so one audit every quarter. You can do more. Dr. D. Rama Mohan, okay, you're welcome, sir. Great. Jyoti has asked, can I have PPT? If you have shared your email, Jyoti ji, the PPT will come to you. Well, I don't know whether you are Jyoti Jha, who has attended our previous program, but if you want presentation, please share your email ID. The presentation will come to you. What is the difference? I think this question has been covered. Excellent review. Thank you very much for liking this. Jyoti, please let me join the Rafa WhatsApp group. Jyoti ji, please share your phone number here. The phone number on which you have the WhatsApp, you will be added to the WhatsApp group. So please share your number here in this chat box, because it is being recorded. So chat box will also be recorded. We will know. Okay, John Carminder, frequency of validation of audit. I think I have answered this question. Okay, then what are the challenges faced while performing audits? So, madam, we can cover this some other time, but let me tell you few important challenges that we face. A lot of times the people who are doing the audit may not be aware of the procedures for audit. It is important to understand, and every forum where I cover this topic, I repeat this point as many times as possible, that audit is something that we need to learn. So we have to figure out how to do an audit correctly. Unless we don't learn, we will not know. So this is the understanding of the process is an important challenge. The second challenge is collecting the data. So unless we have a sample size properly made, unless we have the data formats, so these are the two main challenges. Rest of it follows. I mean, if you have designed it, understood the audit correctly, designed it correctly, and collected the data correctly, then analysis and things like the follow-up things are easier. Okay, so somebody who's named as the biomedical engineering, I suppose, has asked who is the right person to conduct a clinical audit. Okay, so anybody who knows how to conduct a clinical audit is the right person to conduct the clinical audit. But in real practice, in real life, when we do the clinical audit in the hospitals, typically we include a person of that specialty which is under audit. So if you are doing an audit of a care process in pediatrics, please have a pediatrician included. If you are doing an audit of a cardiology setting, in a cardiology setting, please have cardiologist as part of the audit. This is not a compulsory requirement for the purpose of doing the audit, but this is a requirement for increasing the acceptance of your audit findings. So in a pediatric services audit, if you don't have a pediatrician as part of the team, then the pediatricians who are there, they can simply reject your findings. So they said what you have found is incorrect because you don't even know what pediatrics is. So there was no pediatrician who conducted the audit. That is why it is important that we have a person who is connected with that particular domain in which the audit is being done, essentially to increase the acceptance of the findings of the audit. And sometimes a particular clinical process may not be understood. So if I am, for example, if I am part of the audit team and I know the audit process very well, but if something is being audited in cardiology and I have no domain expertise in cardiology, then I will not be able to understand that. So that is why a cardiologist as part of the team will be necessary. So that is how a team for audit is made. Typically, a clinical audit is never done by one single person alone. It is always a small team. Okay, so people have asked for the presentations. Yes. Okay, what else? So if there are no questions, I think Pramila ma'am, you have given your phone number. I presume this is for adding it uh, to the WhatsApp group. Is that the purpose?
Yes, sir.
So then okay, ma'am. So we'll add it in the WhatsApp group. And Jyoti ji, so you're the same person. Fantastic. So the PPT will come to you, no issue. Hima Bindu, you want to get added to the WhatsApp group? Yes, it will be done. What is the limitation of the audits? Yes, I think, ma'am, we did cover in short. The limitation of audit is that if you are doing an audit and if you have not been able to implement the findings or the improvement, then audit has gone waste. So that is the most important limitation. All other limitations can be overcome. But if you are conducting an audit and if you have not made any improvement based on that audit, then the audit has gone waste. So that is the important thing. Okay, what else? Shraddha Sharma. Okay, ma'am. So you want the presentation? Yes, it will be given to you. Okay, so I think the questions have also finished and our time has also finished. Time for me to conduct another live session for participants of the Hospital Quality System program. So thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Nice of you to have joined. And next Saturday, same time, 3 p.m. in the afternoon, we will have another topic. And let me announce for everyone's benefit what will be the topic. So just wait for a second and I'll tell you the topic for the next session. Okay, so the next session, no, it's not there. Okay, we will announce the topic separately. A mail will come to all of you we were earlier sending 2 to 3 mails a week, but I think for this session, every Saturday morning at 6 o'clock, the email will come to all those who are registered for this on the Rafa portal, and this mail will come to you. This mail contains the meeting link, and for everyone's information, I don't change the meeting link. So next Saturday when you all come, even if the mail doesn't reach you or you're not able to see the mail, please use the same link. The same link will be applicable 3 p.m. next Saturday. So thank you everyone. Thank you very much, and all those who have given the email IDs. The presentation will be sent to you maybe by tomorrow evening. Thank you and all the best.
So one point, sir. 1 point, sir.
Yes, please.
Excuse
Yes,
me.
yes.
Sir, link was
Yes, ma'am,
not
tell me.
getting connected,
Yes, yes.
sir. Through ID. Through ID only I could join, sir.
Please.
Through ID only I could join. Link was not connecting me.
Pramila ma'am, boliye, I can hear you.
Sir, link was not connecting today's
Okay, maybe
meeting.
you can.
Only ID helped me.
Okay. ID means?
You have
Okay.
given
No, but the
meeting
same link
ID
has been
also.
used by. Yes. So that is a security feature, ma'am. You have to put the meeting ID also. You have to click the link. It will ask you to download the GoToMeeting app, and then in that app you have to put the meeting ID. This is a security feature, ma'am. It is required for security. So please use the
So
email ID. It will
ID.
be. No. There is a ID number, meeting ID in that link.
Yes, sir.
That
For each meeting, I mean, ID will be different, no, sir?
No, it will be same. It is not going to change.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
So that's how it works. Okay, ma'am. So thank you everyone, and very nice talking to all of you. This video will be available on the YouTube channel of the Research Foundation. So those who have missed, and if you want to share this, please share not only subscribe to the YouTube channel, but also share the link so that it can be seen by wider side of people. Dr. Shakti Gupta is also here. Thank you, sir. Thank you for attending the program. If you have some comments to make, sir, please, I'll request you to add here. I think sir is not near the. Okay. So thank you everyone. I'm going to now disconnect, and there is another session that I need to conduct for the participants of the other program. So thank you everyone, and all the best.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.